footman, that's the first question. It was no doubt. Only Elisa did not like to be told, so it's really beautiful, she to herself, the way all the creators argue to drive crazy. The footman seemed to think this a good opportunity of repeating this remark with variation. I shall sit here, he said, on and off for days and days. But what am I to go, said Elisa. Anything you like, said the footman, and began wilting. Oh, there's no use in talking to him, said Elisa desperately. He's perfectly idiotic. And she opened the door and went in. The door led right into a large kitchen, which was full of smoke from one end to the other. The duchess was sitting on the three-legged stool in the middle, nursing a baby. The cook was leaning over the fire, stirring a large cauldron which seemed to be full of smoke. There's currently too much pepper in that soup, Elisa said to herself, as well as she could, from sensing there was currently too much of it in the air. Even the duchess sensed accosting Ellie, and as for the baby, it was sneezing and howling alternately without a moment's push. The only creatures in the kitchen that did not sneeze were the cook and a large cat which was sitting on the hearth and grinning from ear to ear. Please, would you tell me, said Elisa a little timidly, for she was not quite sure that her in was good manners for her to speak first. Why your cat grins like that? She said the last word with such sudden violence that Elisa quick jumped, but she saw in a moment that it was addressed to the baby and not to her, so she told courage and went on again. I did not know that Cheshire cats always grinned. In fact, I did not know that cats could grin. They all considered their duchess, and most of in do. I don't know of any that too, Elisa said very politely, feeling quite pleased to have got into a conversation. You do not know much, said the duchess, and that's a fact. Lisa did not at all like the tone of this remark and thought it would be as well to introduce same other subject of conversation. Well, she was trying to fix on one. The cook took the cauldron of scoop of the fire and at once set to work, throwing everything within her reach at the duchess and the baby. The pharaohs come first, then followed a shower of suspense, platinum, and dissent. The duchess took no notice of them even when they hit her, and The baby was howling so much already that it was quite impossible to say whether the believers heard it or not. "Oh, please, man, what you're doing?" cried Alisa, jumping up and down in an agony. "Oh, there goes this precious nose," as an unusual large flew close by it and very nearly cried it off. "If everybody minded their own business," said the duchess in a hoarse growl, "the world go round a deal faster than it does, which could not be an advantage," said Alisa, who felt very glad to get an opportunity of showing off a little of her knowledge. "Just think what work it would make with the day and night. You see, it takes 24 hours to turn round on this its axis." "Talking of axes," and said the duchess, shook off her head. Lisa glanced rather excitedly at the cook to see if she meant to take the hint, but the cook was busily stirring the soup and seemed not to be listening, so she went on again. 24 hours, I think, or is it 12? "Oh, don't bother me," said the duchess. "I never could with pregnancy." And with that she began nursing her children again, singing a sort of lullaby to it as she did so, and giving it a lent shake at the end of every line. Well, the duchess sang the second verse of the song. She kept tossing the baby violently up and down, and the poor little thing howled so that Alisa could hardly hear the word. "Here, you many nurse it a bit of you like," said the duchess to Alisa, flinging the baby at her. As she spoke, "I must go and get ready to play croquet with the Queen," and she hurried out of the room. The cook threw a frying pan after her as she went, but it just missed her. Alisa caught the baby with some difficulty, as it was a queer, sharp little creature, and held out its arms and legs in all directions, just like a starfish. Thought Alisa, that poor little thing was nothing like a steam when she caught it and kept doubling itself up and itself out again, so that all together for the first minute or two it was as much as they could do to hold it. As soon as they had made out the proper way of nursing it, which was to twist it up into a sort of knot and then keep. Alice was beginning to get very tired of sitting by her sister on the bank and of having nothing to do. Once or twice she had peeped into the book her sister reading, but it had no pictures or conversations in it, and what is the use of a book, thought Elisa, without pictures or conversations. So she was concentrating in her own maid as well as she could, for the hot day made her feel very sleepy and stupid. Whether the pleasure of making a daisy chain would be worth the trouble of getting up and picking the designs with. Suddenly a white rabbit with pink eyes ran close by her. There was nothing so very remarkable in that, not did Elisa think it so very much out of the way to hear the rabbit say to itself, oh dear, I shall be too late. When she thought it over afterwards, it occurred to her that she ought to have wondered at this, but at the same it all seemed quick natural. But when the rabbit occurred actually and looked at it and then hurried pocket and looked at it and then on, Alicia started to her feet, for it flashed through her mind that she had never before seen a rabbit with either a waistcoat pocket or a watch to take out of it, and burning or a watch to take out of it was burning with trusty. She ran across the field after it and was just in time to see it pop down a large rabbit hole under the heads. In another moment down went Elisa after it, never once considering how in the world she was to get out again. The rabbit hole went straight on like a tunnel for same way and then deeper suddenly down to suddenly that Elisa had not a moment to think about stopping herself before they found herself feeling downward seemed to be a very deep well. There the was very deep. She fell very slowly, for she had plenty of time as she went down to talk about her and to wonder what was going to happen next. First she tried to look down and make out what she was coming to, but it was too dark to see anything. Then she looked at the sides of the well and noticed that they were filled with cupboard, the books, silver here and there. She saw maps and pictures hung upon page. She took down a jar from one of the shelves as they passed, but to her great disappointment it was empty. She did not like to drop the jar for fear of killing somebody underneath, so managed to put it into one of the cupboard as she well passed it. Well, thought Alicia to herself, after such a fall as this, I shall think nothing of tumbling downstairs. How brave they all think me at home. Why, I would not say anything about it, even if I fell off the top of the house, which was very likely true. Down, downward the fall never come to an end. I wonder how many miles I will walk by this time. She sighed aloud. I must be getting somewhere near the center of the earth. Let me see. Miles down, I think, for you, say Elisa, and learned several things of this sort in lessons in the schoolroom, and though this was not a very good opportunity for showing off her knowledge, as there was no one to listen to her, still it was good practice to say it over. Yes, that's about the right distance, but then I wondered that I got. Elisa had not the slightest idea what was other, but she thought they were nice, grand words to say. Presently she began again. I wonder if I shall fall right through the earth. How funny it seemed to come out among the people that walk with their heads downwards. The antithesis, I think she was rather girl. There was no one listening this time, as it did not sound at all the right word. But I shall have to ask them what the name of the country is. You know, please, ma'am. Is this New Zealand or Australia? And the dread to Kirsty as she spoke, fancy courtesy as you are feeling though she air. Do you think you could manage it? And what an ignorant little girl she I think me for ask it. I never do. Perhaps I shall say it written up somewhere. Down. There was nothing else to do, so Alisa began talking again. Dina, I miss me very much tonight. Should think Dina was the cat. I hope I remember her of milk at the tea time. Dina, my dear, I wish you were down here with me. There are no mice in the air, I am afraid, but you might catch a bat, and that's very like a mouse, you know. But look at its bats, I wonder. And here Alisa began to get rather sleepy and went on saying to herself in a demi sort of way, do cats eat birds? Look at its bat, and sometimes do bats eat cats? For you see, as she could not answer either question, it did not much matter which way they put it. They felt that she was dozing off and had just begun to dream that she was walking hand in hand with Dina and was saying to her, now Dina, tell me the truth, did you ever eat a bat? When suddenly thump down she come upon a heap of sticks and tree leaves, and the well was over. Alisa was not a bit hurt, was she? Jumped up onto her feet in a moment. She looked up, but it was all dark overhead. Before her was another long passage, and the white rabbit was still inside, staring down it. There was not a moment to be lost away. Want Alisa like the wind, and want just in time to hear it say as it turned a corner, oh my earth, and was just in how to let it's getting. She was close behind in when she turned the corner, but the rabbit was no longer to be seen. She found herself in a long, low hall which was lit up by a row of lamps hanging from the roof. There were doors all round the hall, but they were all locked. When Lisa and been all the way down one side and up the other, trying every door, she walked sadly down the middle, wondering how she was ever to get out again. Suddenly they come upon a little three-legged table, all made solid glass. There was nothing no it but a tiny golden key, and Alisa's first idea was that this might belong to one of the doors of the hall, but all there the locks were too large, of the key was too small, but at any route it would not open any of them. However, on the second time round she come upon a low curtain she had not noticed before, and behind it was a little door about 15 inches high. She tried the little golden key in the lock, and to her great delight it fitted. Alisa opened the door and found that led into a small passage much larger than a rat hole. She down a looked along the pages in the loveliest garden you ever saw. How she longed to get out of that dark hall and wander about among those beds of bright flowers and those cool fountains. But they could not even get her head through. But she could not even get her head through the doorway, and even in my head would go through poor Elisa. It would be of very little use without my shoulders. Oh, how I wish I could shut up like a telescope. I think I could if I only how to begin. For you say so many out of the way things had happened literally that Elisa had begun to think that every few things indeed were really impossible. There seemed to be no use in waiting by the little door, so she went back to the table, half hoping she may find another key on it, or at any rate a book of rules for shooting people up like telescope. This time she found a little bottle on it, which currently was not here before, said Elisa, and right round the neck of the bottle was a paper label with the words "Drink Me" beautifully printed on it in large letters. It was all very well to say "Drink Me," but the little Elisa was not going to do that in a hurry. "No, I took first," she said, and see what her its marked position or not, for she had read several nice little stories about children who had got bored and eaten up by wild beasts, pleasant things, all because they would not remember the simple rules their friends had taught them, such as that a red hot poker will burn you if you hold it too long, and that if you cut your finger very deeply with a knife it usually bleeds, and she had never forgotten that if you drink much from a bottle marked poison, it is almost certain to disagree with you sooner or later. However, this bottle was not marked poison, so Lisa ventured to attach it, and finding it is very nice. It had in fact a spot of mixed flour, cherry tart, custard, pineapple, roast turkey, toffee, and hot buttered toast. She very soon finished it all. "Oh, what a curious feeling," said Elisa. "Must be shooting up like a telescope." And so it was indeed. She was now only 10 inches high, and her face brightened up at the thought that she was now the right size for going through the little door into that the lovely garden. First, however, she waited for a few minutes to see if she was going to shrink any further. She felt a little nervous about this, for it made, and you know, said Elisa to herself, in my going out altogether like a candle. I wonder what I should be like then. And she tried to fancy what the flame of candle looks like after the candle is blown out, for she could not remember ever having seen such a thing. After the while, finding that nothing more happened, decided on going into the garden at once, but all for poor Lisa. When she got to the door, they found they had forgotten the little garden key, and when she went back to the table for it, she could not possibly reach it. She could see it, and when she went back to the table for it, she could see quick plainly through the glass, and they tried her best to climb up one of the legs of the table, but
رکانہ زخمی شیر کی طرح اٹھا اور غرا کر آپ صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم پر حملہ آور ہوا۔ آپ نے پھر وہی داؤ کھیلا اور اسے پٹخ دیا۔ وہ اٹھا تو آپ صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم نے اسے تیسری بار پٹخا۔ باری برکم جسم 3 بار پٹخا گیا تو کشتی جاری رکھنے کے قابل نہ رہا۔ رکانہ سر جھکا کر اکھاڑے سے نکل گیا۔ ہجوم پر سناٹا طاری ہو گیا۔ اب مسلمان ننگی تلواریں اور برچیاں ہوا میں لہرا لہرا اور اچھال اچھال کر نعرے لگا رہے تھے، چچا رکانہ! رسول اللہ صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم نے للکار کر کہا، اپنا وعدہ پورا کر اور یہی اعلان کر کہ آج سے تو مسلمان ہوا۔ رکانہ نے قبول اسلام سے صاف انکار کر دیا۔ یہ طاقت جسمانی نہیں تھی۔ خالد نے نخلستان میں لیٹے لیٹے اپنے آپ سے کہا، رکانہ کو یوں 3 بار پٹخنا تو دور کی بات ہے، اسے کوئی بچھاڑ بھی نہیں سکا تھا۔ رسول اکرم صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم کا تصور خالد کے ذہن میں نکھر آیا۔ وہ آپ صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم کو اچھی طرح جانتا تھا، لیکن اب وہ محسوس کر رہا تھا جیسے وہ محمد کوئی اور تھے جنہیں وہ بچپن سے جانتا تھا۔ اس کے بعد آپ نے جو روپ اختیار کیا تھا اس میں خالد آپ کو نہیں پہچانتا تھا۔ نبوت کے دعوے کے بعد خالد آپ کے ساتھ بول چال بند ہو گئی۔ وہ آپ کے ساتھ دو ہاتھ کرنا چاہتا تھا، لیکن وہ رکانہ کی طرح پہلوان نہیں تھا۔ وہ میدان جنگ میں لڑنے والا اور لڑنے والوں کی قیادت کرنے والا جنگجو تھا، لیکن اس وقت مسلمان فوج کی صورت میں لڑنے کے قابل نہیں تھے۔ جب مسلمان فوج کی صورت میں لڑنے کے قابل ہوئے اور قریش کے ساتھ ان کا پہلا معرکہ ہوا، اس وقت خالد کے لیے ایسے حالات پیدا ہو گئے تھے کہ وہ اس معرکے میں شامل نہیں ہو سکا تھا۔ اسے بہت افسوس تھا۔ یہ معرکہ بدر کا تھا، جس میں 313 مجاہدین اسلام نے 1000 قریش کو شکست دی تھی۔ خالد دانت پیچتا رہ گیا تھا، لیکن اس روز جب وہ ایک نخلستان میں لیٹا ہوا تھا، اسے خیال آیا کہ 313 نے 1000 کو کس طرح شکست دے دی تھی۔ اس نے شکست کھا کر آنے والے قریش سے پوچھا تھا کہ مسلمانوں میں کون سی خوبی تھی جس نے انہیں فتح یاب کیا تھا۔ خالد اٹھ بیٹھا اور انگلی سے ریت پر بدر کے میدان کے خد و خال بنا کر قریش اور مسلمانوں کی پوزیشنیں اور معرکے کے دوران دونوں کی چالوں کی لکیریں بنانے لگا۔ باپ نے اسے فن حرب و ضرب کا ماہر بنا دیا تھا۔ بچپن میں اسے گھوڑ سواری سکھائی۔ لڑکپن میں اسے اکھڑے اور منہ زور گھوڑوں کو قابو میں لانے کے قابل بنایا۔ نوجوانی میں وہ شاہ سوار بن چکا تھا۔ شتر سواری میں بھی وہ ماہر تھا۔ اس کا باپ ہی اس کا استاد تھا۔ اس نے خالد کو صرف سپاہی نہیں بلکہ سالار بنایا تھا۔ خالد کو جنگ و جدل اتنی اچھی لگی کہ وہ لڑنے اور لڑانے کے طریقوں پر غور کرنے لگا اور جوانی میں فوج کی قیادت کے قابل ہو گیا تھا۔ اسے بدر کی لڑائی میں شامل نہ ہو سکنے کا افسوس تھا اور وہ انتقام کے طریقے سوچتا رہتا تھا، لیکن اب اس کی سوچوں کا دھارا کسی اور طرف چل پڑا تھا۔ مکہ سے روانگی سے کچھ دن پہلے سے وہ اس سوچ میں کھو گیا تھا کہ رسول اکرم صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم نے رکانہ پہلوان کو 3 بار پٹخا تھا اور بدر میں آپ صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم نے محض 313 مجاہدین سے 1000 کو شکست دی۔ یہ کوئی اور ہی قوت تھی۔ لیکن بدر کے معرکے کے بعد اس کے دل میں مسلمانوں کے خلاف انتقام کی آگ سلگ رہی تھی۔ مسلمان معرکہ بدر میں قریش کے بہت سے آدمیوں کو قیدی بنا کر لے گئے تھے۔ قریش کے سرداروں کے لیے تو یہ صدمہ تھا ہی، اس کا بہت برا اثر خالد نے قبول کیا تھا۔ اسے یاد تھا کہ جب بدر کا معرکہ لڑا جا رہا تھا تو مکہ میں کوئی خبر نہیں پہنچ رہی تھی کہ معرکے کا انجام کیا ہوا۔ مکہ کے لوگ بدر کی سمت دیکھتے رہتے تھے کہ ادھر سے کوئی سوار دوڑا آئے گا اور فتح کی خبر سنائے گا۔ آخر ایک روز ایک شتر سوار آتا نظر آیا۔ لوگ اس کی طرف دوڑ پڑے۔ سوار نے عرب کے رواج کے مطابق اپنا کرتا پھاڑ دیا تھا اور وہ روتا آ رہا تھا۔ بری خبر لانے والے قاصد ایسے ہی کیا کرتے تھے۔ وہ جب لوگوں کے درمیان پہنچا تو اس نے روتے ہوئے بتایا کہ اہل قریش کو بہت بری شکست ہوئی ہے۔ جن کے عزیز رشتہ دار لڑنے کے گئے تھے وہ ایک دوسرے سے آگے بڑھ کر ان کے متعلق پوچھتے تھے کہ وہ زندہ ہیں، زخمی ہیں یا مارے گئے ہیں۔ شکست خوردہ قریش پیچھے آ رہے تھے۔ مارے جانے والوں میں 17 افراد خالد کے قبیلے بنو مخزوم کے تھے اور ان سب کے ساتھ خالد کا خون کا بڑا قریبی رشتہ تھا۔ ابو جہل بھی مارا گیا تھا۔ خالد کا بھائی جس کا نام ولید تھا جنگی قیدی ہو گیا تھا۔ ابو سفیان جو قریش کے سرداروں کا سردار تھا، اس کی بیوی ہندہ بھی موجود تھی۔ کچھ میرے باپ اور میرے چچا کے متعلق بتا اے قاصد، ہندا نے پوچھا تمہارا باپ عتبہ علی رضی اللہ تعالیٰ عنہ اور حمزہ کے ہاتھوں مارا گیا ہے۔ قاصد نے کہا تمہارے چچا شیبہ کے اکیلے حمزہ نے قتل کیا ہے اور تمہارا بیٹا حنظلہ علی کے ہاتھوں مارا گیا ہے۔ ابو سفیان کی بیوی ہندا نے پہلے تو علی اور حمزہ کو بلند آواز سے گالیاں دیں، پھر بولی اللہ کی قسم میں اپنے باپ اور اپنے چچا اور اپنے بیٹے کے خون کا بدلہ لوں گی۔ ابو سفیان پر خاموشی طاری تھی۔ خالد کا خون کھول رہا تھا۔ قریش کے 70 آدمی مارے گئے اور جو جنگی قیدی ہوئے ان کی تعداد بھی اتنی ہی تھی۔ خالد اٹھا، دری جھاڑ کر لپیٹی اور گھوڑے کے زین کے ساتھ باندھ کر سوار ہوا اور مدینہ کی سمت چل پڑا۔ اس نے ذہن کو یادوں سے خالی کر دینا چاہا، لیکن اس کا ذہن مدینہ پہنچ جاتا جہاں رسول اللہ صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم تھے، جو تبلیغ اسلام کا مرکز بن گیا تھا۔ آپ صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم کا خیال آتے ہی اس کا ذہن پیچھے چلا جاتا اور اسے وہ منظر دکھاتا جن کے خالق آن حضرت صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم تھے۔ اس کے ذہن میں ہندا کے الفاظ یاد آئے جو اس نے اپنے خامد ابو سفیان سے کہے تھے، میں اپنے باپ اور چچا کو بھول سکتی ہوں۔ ہندا نے کہا تھا کیا میں اپنے لخت جگر حنظلہ کو بھی بھول جاؤں؟ ماں اپنے بیٹے کو کیسے بھول سکتی ہے؟ اللہ کی قسم میں محمد صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم کو اپنے بیٹے کا خون معاف نہیں کروں گی۔ یہ لڑائی محمد صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم نے کرائی ہے، میں حمزہ اور علی کو نہیں بخشوں گی۔ وہ میرے باپ، میرے چچا اور میرے بیٹے کے قاتل ہیں۔ میرے خون کو صرف میرے بیٹے کا قتل گرما رہا ہے۔ ابو سفیان نے کہا تھا مجھ پر اپنے بیٹے کے خون کا انتقام فرض ہو گیا ہے۔ میں سب سے پہلے یہ کام کروں گا کہ محمد کے خلاف زبردست فوج تیار کر کے اسے آئندہ لڑنے کے قابل نہیں چھوڑوں گا۔ مشہور مورخ اور دقائق نگار وقدی لکھتا ہے کہ اگلے ہی روز ابو سفیان نے تمام سرداروں کو بلایا۔ ان میں زیادہ تعداد ان سرداروں کی تھی جو کسی نہ کسی وجہ سے جنگ بدر میں شریک نہیں ہو سکے تھے۔ ان میں سے ہر ایک کا کوئی نہ کوئی عزیز اس جنگ میں مارا گیا تھا۔ سب انتقام کا ارادہ لے کر اکٹھے ہوئے ہیں۔ کیا مجھے زیادہ باتیں کرنے کی ضرورت ہے؟ ابو سفیان نے کہا میرا اپنا جوان بیٹا مارا گیا ہے، اگر میں انتقام نہیں لیتا تو مجھے جینے کا کوئی حق نہیں۔ سب ایک ہی بار بولنے لگے۔ وہ اس پر متفق تھے کہ مسلمانوں سے بدر کی شکست کا انتقام لیا جائے، لیکن آپ میں سے اب کوئی بھی اپنے گھر میں نہ بیٹھا رہے۔ خالد نے کہا بدر میں ہم صرف اس لیے ذلت میں گرے کہ سردار گھروں میں بیٹھے رہے اور ان لوگوں کو لڑنے کے لیے بھیج دیا جو قریش کی عظمت کو نہیں سمجھتے تھے۔ کیا میرے باپ کو بھی قریش کی عظمت کا خیال نہ تھا؟ خالد کے چچا زاد بھائی اکرمہ نے، جو ابو جہل کا بیٹا تھا، برہم ہوتے ہوئے کہا کیا صفوان بن امیہ کے باپ کو بھی قریش کی عظمت کا خیال نہ تھا؟ تم کہاں تھے؟ ولید کے بیٹے ہم یہاں ایک دوسرے سے لڑنے کے لیے اکٹھے نہیں ہوئے۔ ابو سفیان نے کہا خالد تمہیں ایسی بات نہیں کہنی چاہیے تھی جس سے کوئی اپنی بے عزتی محسوس کرے۔ ہم میں سے کوئی بھی عزت والا نہیں رہا۔ خالد نے کہا ہم سب اس وقت تک بے عزت رہیں گے جب تک ہم محمد اور اس کے چیلوں کو ہمیشہ کے لیے ختم نہیں کر دیتے۔ مجھے اپنے گھوڑوں کے سموں کی قسم، میرے خون کی گرمی نے میری آنکھیں جلا دی ہیں۔ ان آنکھوں کو مسلمانوں کا خون ٹھنڈا کر سکتا ہے۔ میں پھر کہوں گا کہ اب سردار آگے ہوں گے اور میں جانتا ہوں کہ میں میدان جنگ میں کہاں ہوں گا، لیکن جنگ میں ہمارا جو سردار ہوگا اس کے حکم کا پابند رہوں گا، اور اگر میں سمجھوں کہ سردار نے مجھے ایسا حکم دیا ہے جو ہمیں نقصان دے گا تو میں ایسا حکم نہیں مانوں گا۔ سب نے متفقہ طور پر ابو سفیان کو اپنا سردار مقرر کیا۔ اس سے کچھ روز پہلے اہل مکہ کا ایک قافلہ فلسطین سے مکہ واپس آیا تھا۔ یہ تجارتی قافلہ تھا۔ مکہ کے باشندوں خصوصاً قریش کے ہر خاندان نے اس تجارت میں حصہ ڈالا تھا۔ اس قافلے میں کم و بیش 1000 اونٹ تھے اور جو مال گیا تھا اس کی مالیت 50,000 دینار تھی۔ قافلے کا سردار ابو سفیان تھا جس نے 50,000 پر 50,000 دینار منافع کمایا تھا۔ قافلے کی واپسی کا راستہ مدینہ کے قریب سے گزرتا تھا۔ مسلمانوں کو پتہ چل گیا۔ انہوں نے پورے قافلے کو گرفتار کرنے کا ارادہ کیا اور ایک مقام پر قافلے کو گھیرے میں لے لیا، لیکن وہ زمین ایسی تھی کہ ابو سفیان نے ایک آدمی اور ایک اونٹ کو زمین کے اونچے نیچے خدوخال سے فائدہ اٹھاتے ہوئے گھیرے سے نکال دیا تھا۔
Girls eat as squid as much as a serpent. Do you know? I don't believe it, said the pagan. But if they do, why then we're a kind of serpent that That's all I can say. This was such a new idea to Elisa that she was quite silent for a minute or two, which gave the penguin the opportunity of adding, "You're looking for eggs, I know that well, Pengy, and what does it matter to me whether you're a little girl or a serpent? It happens, and if I was, I should not want yours. I don't like them, bro. We'll be off then," said the penguin in a sulky tone as it settled down again into its nest. Elisa crouched down among the trees as well as she could, for her knob kept getting entangled among the branches, and every now and then she had to stop and untwist it. After a while, she remembered that she held the pieces of mushroom in her hands, and she set to work very carefully, nibbling first at one and then at the other, and growing sometimes taller and sometimes shorter until she had succeeded in bringing herself down to her usual height. It was so long since she had seen anything near the right size that it felt quite strange at first, but she got used to it in a few minutes and began talking to herself as usual. "Come, there's half my plan done now. How puzzling all these changes are. I am never sure that I am going to be from one minute to another. However, I got back to my right size. The next thing is to get into that beautiful garden. How is that to be done, I wonder?" As she said this, she came suddenly upon an open place with a little house in it, about 4 feet high. "Whoever lives there," thought Lisa, "it's never do to come upon them in this size way. I should frighten them out of their wits." So began nibbling at the right hand bit again, and did not venture to go near the house till she had brought herself down to nice 9-inch high. For a minute or two she stood looking at the house and wondering what to do next, when suddenly a footman. It was so long since she had been anything near the right size that it felt quite strange at first, but she got used to it in a few minutes and began inevitably come running out of the wood. She considered him to be a footman because he was in livery, always judging by his face only. She would have called him a fish and repaired loudly at the door with him. Nevertheless, it was opened by another footman in livery, with a round face and large eyes like a frog, and both footmen Alice noticed had covered hair that curly all over their heads. She felt very curious to know what it was all about, and crept a little way out of the wood to list. The fish footman began by protecting from under his hand a great letter nearly as large as himself, and this he handed over to the other, saying in a slow tone, "For the duchess, an invitation from the queen to play croquet." The frog footman repeated in the same solemn tone, only changing the order of the words a little. "From the queen, an invitation for the duchess to play croquet." Then they were both bowed low, and their curls got interlaid together. Alice laughed so much at this that she had to run back into the wood for fear of their hearing her, and when she next peeped out, the fish footman was gone, and the other was sitting on the ground near the door, staring stupidly up to the door, and knocked. "There's no sort of use in knocking," said the footman. "There's no sort of use in knocking," said the footman, "and that for two reasons. First, because I am on the same side of the door as you are. Secondly, because they are making such a noise inside. No one would making such a noise inside on one child possible. Here you," and currently there was a most extraordinary noise going on within, a constant howling and sensing, and every now and then a great crash, as if a dish or kettle had been broken to pieces. "Please then," sighed Alicia, "how am I to get in? There might be some sense in your knocking," the footman went on without attending to her. "If we had the door between us, for instance, if you were inside, you might knock, and I could let you out." Now he was looking up into the sky all the time he was speaking, and this Alicia thought decidedly unusual. "But he can't help it," she said to herself. "His eyes are so very nearly at the top of his head. But at any rate he may answer questions. How am I to get in?" she repeated alone, "Till tomorrow." At this moment the door of the house opened, and a large lad came screaming out straight at the footman. His head it just grazed his nose and broke to pieces against one of the trees. beat him. Or next day, maybe. The footman continued in the same tone, as if nothing had happened. How I am to go to get in? Asked Alisa again in a louder tone. Are you to get in all? Sighed the girls. It expected the cook threw a frying pan after her as she went, but it just missed her. Alisa caught the baby with same difficulty, as it was a good-shaped little creature, and held out its arms and legs in all directions, just like a starfish, thought Elisa. The poor little thing was snorting like a stream when she caught it, and keep doubling itself up and itself out again, so that all together for the first minute or two it was much as they could do to hold it. As soon as she had made out the proper way of the nursing it, which was to twist it up into a sort of knot, and then keep that hold of its right ear and left foot, so as to prevent its undoing itself, she carried it out into the open air. If I don't take this child away with me, thought Alisa, they're sure to kill it in a day or two. Would not it be murder to live in pain? She said, and then keep that hold of its right and left foot, so as to prevent it undoing itself. She carried it out in the open air. If I don't take this child away with me, thought Alisa, they're sure to kill it in a day or two. Would not it be murder to leave it behind? She said the last words out loud, and the little thing grunted in reply. It had left off singing by this time. Don't read, said Alisa. That's not at all a proper way of experience yourself. The baby urinated again, and Alisa laughed very exclusively into its face to see what was the matter with it. There could be no doubt that it had a very turn-up nose, much more like a snort than a real nose. Also, its eyes were getting extremely small for a baby. Altogether, Alisa did not like the look of the thing at all, but perhaps it was only sobbing, the thought, and looked into its eyes again to see if there were any tears. No, there were no tears. You are going to turn into a pig, my dear, said Alisa. Surely I have nothing more to do with you, mean? Now the poor little thing sobbed again, and they went on for some while in silence. Alisa was just beginning to think to herself, now what am I to do with this creature when I get it home? when it grunted again so violently that she looked down into its face in same alarm. This time there could be no mistake about it. It was neither more nor less than a pig, and she felt that it would be quick absurd for her to carry it, my father. So she set the little creature down and felt quickly word to say it trod away quickly into the world. If it had grown up, she said to herself, it would have made a dreadfully ugly child, but it makes rather a handsome pig, I think. And she began thinking our other children she knew who made do very well as pigs, and was just saying to herself, if one only know the right way to change. Then when she was a little startled by seeing that cherry cat sitting on a branch of a tree a few yards off, the cat only joined with it. Sir Elisa, it looked good natured, she thought. Still, it had very long claws and a great many teeth, so she felt it ought to be treated with respect. Sir Pussy began rather timidly, as she did not at all know whether it would like the name. However, it only needed a little wider come its place to her, thought Elisa, and she went onward. You tell me, please, which way I ought to walk from here. That depends a good deal on where you want to go. Get to, said the cat. I don't much care where, said Elisa. Then it does not matter which way you walk, said the cat, so long as I get somewhere, Elisa added as an explanation. Oh, you are sure to do what said. If you only walk long in. Elisa felt that this could not be changed, so she tried another question. What sort of people lived about here in that direction? The cat said, waving in that direction. It's right there round lies a hatter, and in that direction, waving the other lies a match here. Visit either you like, they're both made. But I don't want to go among and people, Elisa remarked. Oh, you can't help that, said the cat. We're all made here. I am made here. Made how do you know I am made, said Elisa. You must be, said the cat, or you would not have come here. Elisa, don't think that provide it at all. However, she went on, and how do you know that you were made to begin with, said the cat. A dog's not made you generate that. I suppose so, said Elisa. Well, then, the cat went on. You see, a dog growls when it's angry and wags its tail when it's pleased. Now I growl when angry. Therefore, I am made. I call it purring, not growling, said Elisa. Call it what you like, said the cat. Do you play cricket with a queen today? I should like it very much, so said Alisa. But I had been invited yet. You will see me there, said the cat, and winced. Lisa was not much surprised at the she was getting so used to queer these things happiness. While she was still looking at the place where it had been, it suddenly appeared again. But the boy, what became of the baby, said the cat. Idea never forgotten to ask. It's turned into a pig, Lisa answered very quickly, just as if the cat had come back in a natural way. I thought it would, said the cat, and vanished again. I thought it. Alisa waited a little, half expecting to say it again, but it did not appear, and after a minute or two she wilked on in the direction in which the March hare was said to live. I've seen hatters before, she said to herself. The March hare will be much the most interesting and purpose as this is my. It won't be raving made, at least not too made as it was in March. As she said this, she looked up, and there was the cat again, sitting on the branch of a tree. Did you say pig or fig? Said the cat. I said pig, replied Alisa, and I wish you would not keep appearing and winching. All right, said the cat, and this time is finished. Quick, slowly picking with the end of the tail and ending with the green, which some time after the rest of it had gone. Well, I've often seen a cat without a grin, thought Alisa, but a grin without a cat, it's the most curious thing I ever saw in all my life. She had not gone much farther before she came inside of the house of the March hare. She thought it must be the right house because the chimneys were shaped like L's and the roof was. It was so large a horse that she did not like to go near to it till she had nibbled some more of the left hand bit of mushroom and raised herself to about 2 feet high. Even then she walked up towards it rather timidly, saying to herself, suppose it should be raving mad after all. I almost wished I had gone to see that hatter inside. There was a table set out under a tree in front of the house, and the March hare and the hatter were having tea at it. A dormouse was getting between them first sleep, and the other two were using it as a cushion, resting their elbows on it and talking over its head, very uncomfortable for the dormouse, thought Elisa, only as its